Hi everyone and welcome to another mathematics video. In today's video we're going to look at the Crawford prelim from 2022 and this is for the paper 1 exam. Now prelims have a track record for being notoriously difficult among students, but rest assured you can conquer the prelim as well. So usually it seems like the prelim is much harder than the final exam, so let's try out a prelim and see how we can do. Remember always to read through the instructions carefully. We're told that this question paper has 26 pages. It has an information sheet as well. And let's look for any decimal places that they might want us to use. We need to round everything off to one decimal place unless otherwise stated, because you actually get marks deducted for not putting things in the correct decimal places. Okay. So in this video, we're going to cover question 1, section A, which is going to be algebra. So for question A, number 1, we're asked to solve for x correct to one decimal place where necessary. So in our first question, we have x times x minus 2 is equal to 8. So let's start by distributing this x into the bracket. So this is going to be x squared minus 2x is equal to 8. And let's turn this into a trinomial so that we can factorize it. So that would be x squared minus 2x minus 8 is equal to 0. Then from here we know how to solve for x because we can factorize this into two brackets. We can have an x on the one side and x on the other side. Both of our signs are negative, and we need two numbers when multiplied together that are going to give us negative 8, and when we add them together they're going to give us negative 2, so that would be negative 4 and positive 2. Therefore x is either equal to 4 or x is equal to negative 2. And there you go, 3 marks in the bag. Next up we have x squared. We need to solve for x. For x squared minus px is equal to negative 2, but we're asked to solve this in terms of p. Now, because we have two variables, we can't use the same sort of strategy that we used in question 1. So instead, we're going to use the quadratic formula. And just as a reminder, the quadratic formula is given by x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, everything over 2a. So let's rewrite this into standard form as a trinomial. So this would be x squared minus px plus 2, because we're going to take our negative 2 from the one side to the other side. And now we have everything in the standard form, ax squared minus bx squared plus c. Now we can use our quadratic formula. We know that x is equal to negative b would be negative p, which is positive p. So that would be p plus or minus the square root of b squared. So b is negative p, so that's negative p squared minus 4a is 1, c is 2, everything divided by 2a, a is 1. And now let's simplify this. X is equal to p plus or minus the square root of negative p squared is just going to be p. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. 2 times 1 gives us 2. And so our final answer is x is equal to p plus or minus the square root of p minus 8 over 2. Let's take a look at question 3. For question 3, we have 2 times the square root of x minus 1 plus 1 is equal to x. So what we can do for this one is we can start off by taking this 1 to the right hand side. So we'll have 2 times the square root of x minus 1 is equal to x minus 1. Now we're going to try and get rid of this square root, and we can do this by squaring both sides, and we'll have 2 squared is 4, and this square gets rid of the square root, and so this would be 4 times x minus 1 is equal to x minus 1 squared. The shortcut for squaring a binomial, you'd square your first term, so this is going to be x squared, square your last term, plus 1. Negative 1 times x is negative x, times 2 would be negative 2x. We can distribute this 4 into the bracket. This leaves us with 4x minus 4 is equal to x squared minus 2x plus 1. Let's add all of our like terms together. I'm going to bring everything over to the right-hand side. So 0 will equal to x squared is the only x squared, negative 2. So this would be minus 4 on both sides. So negative 2 minus 4 would be negative 6x. And negative 4, we'd add 4 to both sides. So 1 plus 4 would be plus 5. So we're left with x squared minus 6x plus 5 is equal to 0. Now we can just factorize this. We have a negative 6x and a positive 5. We need two numbers, which when multiplied together will give us a positive 5. But when we add them together will give us a negative 6. So we can have x minus 5 and x minus 1. Therefore, x is equal to 5 or x is equal to 1. Easy enough. And then let's go over to question 4. So here we have 3 to the power of x plus 3 minus 3 to the power of x plus 2 plus 3 to the power of 0 is equal to 487. So we can start off by using our laws of exponents. We know that anything to the power of 0 is equal to 1. So we can just subtract this 1 on both sides. So we can be left with our exponents only on the left-hand side. So we'll have 3 to the power of x plus 3 minus 3 to the power of x plus 2. And then we've got 3 to the power of 0, which we know is equal to 1. So 487 minus 1 would be 486. Just to simplify things, so we have all of our x's on one side and all of our constants on the other side. From here, we can take out a common factor of 3 to the power of x. So 3 to the power of x would be multiplied by 3 to the power of 3 minus 3 to the power of 2 is equal to 487. Oh, 486, sorry. 3 to the power of 3 is 27. 3 to the power of 2 is 9. So this is 27 minus 9, which gives us 18. So 3 to the power of x times 18 is equal to 486. If we divide by 18 on both sides, we're left with 3 to the power of x is equal to, let's type this into our calculators, 486 divided by 18. That leaves us with 27. And we know the factors of 27. 3x is equal to 3 cubed. Therefore, x is equal to 3. There we go. And our last question or our last section for question A is this very interesting question here. We're asked to solve for x and y if x minus 1 squared plus 2y plus 3x squared is equal to 0. Now, we know the square of a real number is always positive, right? Or it's always non-negative. We also know that the sum of two squares can only be equal to 0 if and only if each square is equal to 0. So that means that x squared, 2x minus 1 squared plus 2y plus 3x squared is equal to 0 can also be rewritten as two different equations, right? So we can have our first equation, 2x minus 1 squared is equal to 0. That's equation 1. And then we have 2y plus 3x squared is equal to 0. And that would be our equation 2. So let's start off with equation 1 so that we can solve for x. So we'll have 2x minus 1 squared is equal to 0. If we take the square root of both sides, the square root of 0 is just 0, and this just leaves us with 2x minus 1 is equal to 0. Let's scroll up a little bit. So this is 2x is equal to 1. Dividing both sides by 2, we find that x is equal to a half. Cool. Half of our question is done now. Now we need to solve for y. We can solve for y by substituting x into equation 2. We'll do the same thing that we did for equation 1. 2y plus 3x squared is equal to 0. If we take the square root of both sides, we're left with 2y plus 3x is equal to 0. Now remember, we're trying to find y alone. So we're going to take x to the other side of the equation. So we're left with 2y is equal to negative 3x. And to find y alone, we'll divide both sides by 2. And we find that y is equal to negative 3 over 2x. Now remember, we already know that x is equal to a half. Therefore, y is equal to negative 3, negative 3 over 2 times 1 over 2. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. 2 times 2 is 4. So y is equal to negative 3 over 4, and x is equal to a half. That's it for question 1. In the next video, we're going to cover question 2.